This recipe calls for 3.5 cups of flour. You can use any combination of flour you want. Today I'm going to use 1 cup of whole wheat flour and 2.5 cups of regular white flour. But you could use rye flour or bread flour or any combination thereof. Then you're going to need 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt and 1/2 teaspoon of dry active yeast. Then measure out 1 3/4 cups of room temperature filtered water. One thing that is different about this bread recipe and that I really enjoy is that you don't have to be ultra precise. Yeah, please measure your ingredients, but you don't need to bust out a scale or anything like that. Start adding your water and mixing by hand. It's important to mix by hand because you want to be able to feel this dough. It sounds funny and you won't really understand until you actually do it, but you will feel when this dough comes together as one cohesive ball, and that is where you want it. You don't want to overhydrate it or else it'll be way too sticky in my experience. So you want it like that, where you can just grab it, pick it up, and it all comes up in one handful. Then, this is a little trick for cleaning your sticky fingers. Just make like the OK symbol and then scrape the dough off your fingers. Stick this in the oven, cold oven, and turn your oven light on. And that is going to keep it at the perfect temperature for the yeast to develop over the course of 8 to 15 hours until it looks like this. It has doubled or more in size, and the top is dotted with bubbles. So then you're going to take a heavy cast iron Dutch oven, but you could also use a big stock pot or pasta pot, but cast iron Dutch oven does work best. Put it in an oven, a cold oven, and then preheat to 450 degrees. Here's a brief diversion for a cool little science demonstration. The yeast forms carbon dioxide, which is denser than air, and so it sits on top of the dough in the bowl and lets you do this. Nifty. Anyway, what you want to do now is kind of fold the dough in on itself. And you don't need to pull it out of the bowl, but you want to flour your fingers and then start to do this. Start to scrape it away from the sides of the bowl and fold it towards the center. And just kind of start slow. It might be a little temperamental, but within a couple seconds, within a couple folds, you'll see you're going to be able to pull a big portion of the dough away from the bowl and fold it in towards the center. So not only are you kind of forming your ball, forming your loaf here, but you're also pulling the dough away from the sides of the bowl so it's not going to be sticky, and when it's time to dump it into the Dutch oven, it's going to be really easy to do. Don't be afraid to sprinkle a little flour on it during this process, just to make it easier to work with. And you can see in just a couple of seconds, it's gotten much more cooperative. It's gotten much more malleable. It kind of feels like, it almost like brings out the kid in you. It feels like Play-Doh, like you want to play with it, but don't. Just kind of gently keep folding it into the center of the bowl until it kind of feels like it did when you first made it. It feels like if you just grabbed it, you could pick the entire thing up with none of it sticking to the sides of the bowl. So this right here is about where you want it, and it'll take anywhere from like 10 to 20 folds. Don't worry too much about the exact number. Just keep folding until it feels like you could scoop the whole thing out in one cohesive ball right out of the bowl. And once you get it to that point, cover it with a kitchen towel or some plastic wrap and wait 30 minutes. You really have to preheat the oven for 30 minutes. Even if it beeps and tells you it's up to temperature, 30 minutes, because you need that Dutch oven to be extremely hot. So after 30 minutes, you pull your Dutch oven out, and I like to give it a sprinkle of either cracked wheat or cornmeal or whatever I have handy or whatever they have at the store. It's optional. You can also just use a sprinkle of flour, but something like cornmeal or cracked wheat gives it a really rustic look and some nice texture. So then you're going to fold your dough over a couple times to make sure you can, scoop it out relatively smoothly, and then drop it in that hot pot. Give a handful of cracked wheat or cornmeal or flour to the top just for aesthetics and texture. Then get the lid on and slide it into the oven. Then set a timer for 30 minutes. after 30 minutes, you are going to take the lid off and put it back in the oven and set a timer for 20 minutes. This second portion of the bake is to really get the crust to the level of doneness that you want. So it probably won't be done after 20 minutes, but this is when you want to start checking it. This particular loaf took, after I checked it after 20 minutes, it took an additional 10 to 12 minutes until it was like the level of golden, crispy beautifulness that I wanted, which is this. Transfer it carefully to a wire cooling rack and do not cut into it for at least half an hour. And it will still be steaming hot on the inside after half an hour, I promise you that. Oh yeah, don't forget to put it on Instagram. So, check out this crumb. The crumb is the fancy word for the inside of the bread. Smells really good. So that's it. That's a beautiful rustic loaf of no-knead bread at home. Hey, why stop there? Let's make something delicious. So I'm taking 2 big slices from the center, so they're pretty enormous. Then I'm going to get a few more shots on Instagram because I'm pretty proud of this loaf. Some shredded kale in a bowl with an avocado and the juice of half a lime. And I'm going to mix and smash that all around together and then spread it on one of those pieces of bread. Then I'm going to sprinkle on some red chili flakes for heat, some coarse, crunchy salt, and finally a mountain of grilled chicken that I prepared yesterday. Then I'm going to drizzle this whole thing with tahini salad dressing, which if you follow me on Instagram, you saw me make yesterday as well. But it's basically just tahini, which is pureed sesame seeds, mixed with lemon juice, a little bit of cayenne pepper, a little bit of salt, and just enough water to thin it out into salad dressing consistency. And it's one of my favorite salad dressings ever, and it works really well with the chicken, and especially with the kind of rough crunch of the kale. Now for some dessert, I went with almond butter and maple syrup, which is a lot like peanut butter and honey, but better, in my opinion. A sliced banana, and then I remembered that I had some baking chocolate, some bittersweet chocolate left over from a baking project last year. So I chopped up a little bit of that and sprinkled it over top with some cinnamon. And these 2 open-faced sandwiches, after they went on Instagram, of course, were amazing. So tasty, so gratifying to basically make this entire thing from scratch. And I encourage you to try it. This bread recipe is so forgiving. You can be inexperienced, you can make mistakes, and it actually will still turn out really, really good. So give it a shot. Tag me in your Instagram posts. Let me know what else you want to learn how to cook. And everybody stay well.